The highway stretched endlessly under the Wyoming sky, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through fields of golden grass that swayed like a restless sea. Elliot gripped the steering wheel of his beat-up Ford F-150. The engine's rumble a steady heartbeat against the silence of the dusk. He was 28, transgender, and running from a past that clung to him like the dust on his boots. He adjusted his rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of his own sharp jawline and tired green eyes. The road was supposed to be freedom, but tonight, it felt like a trap. 2 miles back, blue and red lights had flashed in his mirror, and now a police cruiser was tailing him, its presence a weight on his chest. He wasn't speeding. The truck's registration was clean, but Elliot knew better than to assume this was routine. In a small town like Laramie, a guy like him alone, driving a truck that screamed, "Doesn't belong," was a lightning rod for trouble. The cruiser's siren gave a sharp yelp, and Elliot's stomach knotted. He pulled over onto the gravel shoulder, the tires crunching like broken glass. His hands shook as he reached for his license. The name Elliot James printed in bold, a hard-won truth that still felt fragile. The officer, a broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut and a smirk, sauntered up to the window. His badge read, "Officer Tate." "License and registration," Tate drawled, his eyes scanning Elliot with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Elliot handed over the documents, keeping his movements slow, deliberate. Tate's partner, a younger cop with a nervous twitch, stood a few paces back, hand resting on his holster. Tate studied the license, then looked at Elliot, his smirk widening. "You're too pretty to drive this truck, kid. What's a city boy like you doing out here in the sticks?" Elliot's jaw tightened. The words weren't just a jab, they were a test, a probe to see how he'd react. He forced a neutral tone. "Just passing through, officer." Tate chuckled, leaning closer, his breath sour with coffee. "Passing through? Huh. You don't look like you belong in a rig like this. Let's see what's in the back." Elliot's heart pounded. The truck bed was empty except for a duffel bag with clothes and a few books, nothing illegal. But he knew that didn't matter. Not here. Not when Tate's eyes lingered too long, searching for a reason to escalate. "It's just my stuff," Elliot said, voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his veins. "Step out of the vehicle," Tate ordered, his tone sharp now. The younger cop shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Elliot complied, his boots hitting the gravel with a soft thud. The air was cool, the sky bruising purple, and the world felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. As Tate rummaged through the truck bed, tossing Elliot's bag onto the ground, the younger cop spoke up, his voice hesitant. "Tate, maybe we should." "Shut it, rookie," Tate snapped, unzipping the duffel. He pulled out a worn copy of Stone Butch Blues, holding it up like evidence. "What's this? You some kind of activist or something?" Elliot's chest burned. He wanted to scream, to tell Tate to keep his hands off his life. But he knew better. Silence was safer. Silence might get him out of this. Then, headlights cut through the dusk. Another vehicle, a dusty Jeep, pulled up behind the cruiser. A man stepped out, tall and broad, with a scruffy beard and a flannel shirt that strained against his shoulders. His brown eyes locked onto the scene, narrowing as he took in Tate's aggressive stance and Elliot's rigid posture. "Everything okay here?" the man asked, his voice low but firm, carrying the weight of someone who didn't back down. Tate straightened, clearly annoyed. "This ain't your business. Sam, go back to your garage." Sam. The name hit Elliot like a spark. He didn't know this guy, but the way Sam stood, feet planted, hands loose but ready, suggested he wasn't just a bystander. He was 32, a mechanic in Laramie, known for fixing cars and keeping his head down. But something about Elliot's situation had pulled him out of the Jeep and into the fray. I said, "Is everything okay?" Sam repeated, stepping closer. His gaze flicked to Elliot, and for a split second, their eyes met. There was no judgment there, only concern and something else. Something unspoken that made Elliot's breath catch. Tate scoffed, tossing the book back into the duffel. "This kid's got no business driving a truck like this. Probably stole it." "That's my truck," Elliot said, his voice cutting through the tension. "I've got the title in the glove box." Sam's lips twitched. Almost a smile. "Sounds like you've got no cause to hold him. Tate, let's see that title, and we can all go home." The younger cop shifted again, clearly uneasy. Tate's face reddened, but he gestured for Elliot to retrieve the title. As Elliot moved to the cab, Sam stayed close, his presence a quiet shield. The title was there, just as Elliot said, and Tate's smirk faded as he read it. "All right," Tate muttered, handing back the documents. "Get out of here. But I'm watching you. Pretty boy." Elliot climbed back into the truck, his hands trembling as he gripped the wheel. Sam lingered by the window, his voice soft. "You good?" Elliot nodded, unable to find words. Sam's eyes held his for a moment longer. Then he stepped back, watching as Elliot pulled away. In the rearview mirror, Elliot saw Sam climb into his Jeep, but the cruiser didn't follow. Not yet. The diner up the road was a neon beacon in the growing dark. Elliot parked, his heart still racing, and stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling. He needed coffee, a moment to breathe. The place was half empty, the air thick with the smell of grease and pie. He slid into a booth, trying to shake the memory of Tate's smirk. Then the bell jingled again. Sam walked in, his boots heavy on the linoleum. He scanned the room, spotted Elliot, and hesitated before walking over. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, his voice gentle but rough around the edges. Elliot gestured to the empty seat, his guard still up. "You didn't have to do that back there." Sam shrugged, sliding into the booth. "Tate's an asshole. Always has been. I'm Sam. By the way." "Elliot," he replied, his voice quieter than he meant. Their eyes met again, and this time, the spark was undeniably a flicker of something that felt dangerous and alive. As the waitress poured coffee, Elliot realized he wasn't just running anymore. He was standing still, right here, in a diner in the middle of nowhere, with a man who'd just stepped into his life like he'd been waiting for him all along. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting a warm glow over the red vinyl booths. Elliot's coffee sat untouched, steam curling into the air as he studied Sam across the table. The man's hands were rough, stained with grease from years of wrenching engines. But his eyes were soft, searching Elliot's face like he was trying to read a map. "You don't strike me as the type to just jump into someone else's mess," Elliot said, breaking the silence. His voice was cautious, testing the waters. Sam's intervention on the highway had been a lifeline, but trust was a luxury Elliot rarely afforded. Sam leaned back, his flannel shirt crinkling. "I don't usually, but something about that scene didn't sit right. Tate's got a reputation around here. Likes to throw his weight around, especially with folks who don't fit his idea of normal." Elliot's fingers tightened around his mug. He knew exactly what Sam meant. Laramie wasn't the kind of place where a trans guy could blend in, no matter how much he tried. The town was a patchwork of pickup trucks, cowboy hats, and unspoken rules about who belonged. Elliot had felt the stares since he'd rolled in 2 days ago, looking for a cheap motel and a place to clear his head. "What's your story, then?" Sam asked, his tone light but curious. You're not from around here. That truck's got Colorado plates. But you don't seem like you're just passing through. Elliot hesitated. He wasn't used to questions that didn't feel like traps. I'm figuring things out, he said finally. Left Denver a few weeks ago. Needed a change. Sam nodded, like he understood more than Elliot was saying. I get that. This place can feel like a cage sometimes. I've been here my whole life. Fixing cars. Keeping my head down. But it's not always enough. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Elliot caught the flicker of something in Sam's eyes: regret. Maybe. Or longing. He wanted to ask. But the waitress appeared, sliding a slice of apple pie in front of Sam. On the house, she said with a wink before walking away. Sam chuckled, pushing the plate toward Elliot. You look like you could use this more than me. Elliot smirked, the tension in his shoulders easing. You always this nice to strangers. Only the ones who look like they've been through hell, Sam replied, his voice soft but pointed. Elliot took a bite of the pie, the sweetness cutting through the bitterness of the day. For a moment, they ate in silence, the jukebox playing a low, twanging country song. But the quiet wasn't awkward, it was alive, like the air before a storm. So, what's next for you? Sam asked, leaning forward. You gonna keep running? Or you sticking around? Elliot's fork paused midair. He hadn't thought that far ahead. Denver was a ghost town of memories, his family's rejection after he came out. The job he'd lost when his boss didn't approve. The ex who'd called him a mistake. The road had been his only plan. But now, sitting across from Sam, he felt a pull to stay, even if just for a night. I don't know, he admitted. Depends on whether this town's gonna let me breathe. Sam's expression darkened. Tate's not the whole town. There's good people here, too. You just gotta know where to look. Before Elliot could respond, the diner's door swung open, the bell jangling harshly. Officer Tate stepped inside, his eyes locking onto Elliot like a predator spotting prey. The air in the diner shifted, conversations quieting as locals glanced over. Tate wasn't in uniform now, but his presence was just as imposing, his boots thudding as he approached their booth. Well, Tate said, his voice dripping with mock surprise. Didn't expect to see you two getting cozy. Sam, you slumming it now? Sam's jaw clenched, but his voice stayed calm. Just having pie. Tate, you want some? Or you here to cause trouble? Tate's smirk returned, his eyes flicking to Elliot. I'm keeping an eye on our visitor here. Don't want him stirring up anything unnatural. The word hit Elliot like a punch. He stood, his chair scraping against the floor. I'm not your problem. Tate, leave me alone. Tate stepped closer, his bulk looming. You don't tell me what to do. Pretty boy. I know your type. You think you can roll into my town and... Enough. Sam cut in, standing to meet Tate's gaze. He was taller, broader, and his voice carried a quiet steel. You're not on duty. Tate, walk away. The diner was silent now, every eye on them. Tate's face twisted, but he backed off, muttering something under his breath before stalking out. The door slammed behind him, and the tension in the room broke like a snapped wire. Elliot sank back into the booth, his hands shaking again. Sam sat too, his expression unreadable. You didn't have to do that, Elliot said, echoing his earlier words. Yeah, I did, Sam replied. And I'd do it again. Their eyes met, and this time, the spark wasn't just a flicker, it was a flame. Elliot felt it in his chest, a warmth that scared him as much as it thrilled him. He didn't know Sam, didn't know if he could trust this feeling. But for the first time in months, he didn't feel alone. As they finished their coffee, Sam scribbled his number on a napkin and slid it across the table. "In case you need a friend," he said, his voice low. "Or a mechanic." Elliot took the napkin, his fingers brushing Sam's. "Thanks," he said, and meant it. Outside, the night was cold, the stars sharp against the black sky. Elliot climbed into his truck, Sam's number burning a hole in his pocket. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now, he had a reason to stay. Elliot woke to the sound of his phone buzzing against the motel nightstand, the screen glowing in the dim room. It was barely 6 a.m., and the name Sam flashed across the display. He hesitated, his thumb hovering over the answer button, then picked up. "Elliot, you okay?" Sam's voice was urgent, rough with sleep. "I just heard Tate's been asking around about you. He's got a bug up his ass, and I don't like it." Elliot sat up, the thin motel sheets sliding off his shoulders. The room smelled of stale coffee and cheap carpet cleaner, a far cry from the warmth of the diner last night. "What's he asking?" Elliot's voice was steady, but his pulse wasn't. "Stuff about where you're staying, what you're doing here. He's fishing, and it ain't for compliments." Sam paused, then added, "Look, I know you don't owe me anything, but maybe lay low today. Come by my garage if you need a place to hang out." Elliot rubbed his eyes, the weight of the past 24 hours settling in. He wanted to trust Sam, wanted to believe the warmth in his voice was real, but trust was a tightrope he'd fallen from too many times. "I'll think about it," he said. "Thanks for the heads up." After hanging up, Elliot stared at the napkin with Sam's number, now tucked into his wallet. He didn't know what to make of this guy, a mechanic who stepped into fights that weren't his, who looked at Elliot like he saw more than just a stranger passing through. It was disorienting, like finding solid ground after years of quicksand. He showered, pulled on a clean t-shirt and his leather jacket, and headed out. The motel parking lot was quiet, his truck the only vehicle not coated in morning dew. As he climbed in, he noticed a folded piece of paper tucked under the windshield wiper. His stomach dropped as he unfolded it. "Leave town. Freak. You don't belong here." The words were scrawled in black marker, jagged and angry. Elliot's hands shook as he crumpled the note, his eyes scanning the lot. No one was there, but the message was clear. Tate, or someone like him, wasn't done. He drove to Sam's garage, a squat brick building on the edge of town with a sign that read Hanson's Auto Repair. The bay doors were open, revealing a clutter of tools and a half-dismantled Chevy. Sam was under the hood, his flannel sleeves rolled up, grease smudged on his forearms. He looked up as Elliot parked, a smile breaking across his face. "Didn't expect you to take me up on the offer so soon," Sam said, wiping his hands on a rag. His eyes flicked to Elliot's face, reading the tension there. "What's wrong?" Elliot handed him the crumpled note. Sam's smile vanished as he read it, his jaw tightening. "This is Tate's kind of bullshit," he said, his voice low. "He's done this before, scaring people he doesn't like out of town." Elliot leaned against the truck, crossing his arms. "I'm not running. Not this time." Sam nodded, respect flickering in his eyes. "Good. You shouldn't have to. But you need to watch your back. Tate's got friends, and they're not exactly the welcoming committee." They spent the morning in the garage, Sam working on the Chevy while Elliot helped with small tasks, handing him tools, holding a flashlight. It was mundane, grounding, and for a few hours, Elliot felt like he could breathe. Sam talked easily, sharing stories about growing up in Laramie, about his dad who'd owned the garage before him. There was a sadness in his voice when he mentioned his dad, but he didn't elaborate, and Elliot didn't push. Around noon, A customer dropped off a car, and Sam invited Elliot to grab lunch at a food truck nearby. They sat on a bench outside, eating tacos under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Elliot found himself watching Sam the way his hands moved. Sure and steady. The way his laugh lines deepened when he smiled. It was dangerous, this pull. But Elliot couldn't look away. You ever think about leaving this place? Elliot asked, picking at his food. You said it feels like a cage. Sam's smile faded. His eyes distant. Thought about it plenty. Almost did. Once. But family stuff kept me here. Obligations. Elliot wanted to ask more, but a shadow fell over them. Two men approached, both in their late 30s, wearing work boots and hard stares. One had a buzz cut like Tate's, the other a scar across his cheek. You're the new guy? Buzz cut said, his tone cold. Heard you're causing trouble. Sam stood, placing himself between Elliot and the men. He's not causing anything. You got a problem. Take it up with me. Scarface smirked. Heard you're sweet on him. Hanson. Didn't know you swung that way. The words were a blade. Sharp and deliberate. Elliot's heart raced. But Sam didn't flinch. Walk away, he said, his voice like steel. Now. The men laughed, but backed off, their eyes promising trouble later. Elliot's chest was tight, not just from the confrontation, but from Sam's words. His unwavering defense. You didn't have to. Stop saying that. Sam interrupted, his voice softer now. I'm not going to let them hurt you, Elliot. Not while I'm around. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work and quiet moments. But the note and the men's words lingered like a storm cloud. As evening fell, Sam offered to drive Elliot back to the motel. But Elliot shook his head. I need to clear my head. I'll walk. Sam frowned, but didn't argue. Call me if you need me, he said, pressing a spare key to the garage into Elliot's hand. This place is yours if you need somewhere safe. Elliot nodded, the key heavy in his pocket. As he walked through Laramie's quiet streets, the note's words echoed in his mind. He wasn't running. Not anymore. But he wasn't sure what he was fighting for until he thought of Sam's smile. And the answer started to take shape. The motel's neon sign flickered as Elliot approached, casting jagged shadows across the parking lot. The night was colder now, the air biting at his exposed neck. He clutched Sam's key in his pocket, its weight a small comfort against the unease that had settled in his bones. Inside his room, he locked the door and checked the windows, a habit from years of feeling like a target. The note was still crumpled in his jacket, a reminder that Laramie wasn't done with him. He sat on the bed, staring at his phone, Sam's number glowing on the screen. He wanted to call, to hear that steady voice again. But something held him back. Fear. Maybe. Or the nagging voice that said he didn't deserve this kind of kindness. A sharp knock at the door jolted him upright. His heart raced as he approached, peering through the peephole. It was Sam, his face tense, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Elliot opened the door, confusion knitting his brow. What's going on? Tate's on a rampage, Sam said, stepping inside. He was at the bar, drunk, talking about teaching you a lesson. I don't trust him tonight. You shouldn't stay here alone. Elliot's stomach twisted. I can handle myself, he said, but the words felt hollow. He'd faced worse than Tate hate mail. Slurs. Fists, but this felt different. Personal. I know you can, Sam said, his eyes locking onto Elliot's. But you don't have to. Not tonight. Come stay at my place. It's just a couch. But it's safe. Elliot hesitated. The offer tempting, but terrifying. Staying with Sam meant letting someone in, crossing a line he'd drawn years ago to protect himself. But the memory of Sam standing between him and those men at the food truck, unwavering, made the decision easier. "Okay," he said finally. "Let me grab my stuff." Sam's house was a small, weathered bungalow on the outskirts of town, surrounded by sagebrush and silence. Inside, it was warm, cluttered with books and old records, a guitar leaning against the wall. It felt like Sam, rough around the edges, but safe, like a harbor in a storm. They sat on the couch, a beer in Sam's hand, a glass of water in Elliot's. The silence was comfortable, but the air was charged, like they were both waiting for something to break. "You didn't have to take me in," Elliot said, his voice low. "You barely know me." Sam set his beer down, his eyes serious. "I know enough. I know you're strong, even if you don't see it. I know you've been through shit most people wouldn't survive. And I know I don't want you facing it alone." Elliot's throat tightened. No one had ever said anything like that to him, not with such raw honesty. He looked at Sam, really looked, and saw the same vulnerability he felt a man who'd spent years hiding parts of himself, carrying burdens no one else could see. "Why do you care?" Elliot asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. Sam leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because I see you, Elliot. Not just the guy in the truck. Not just the name on your license. You." The words hit like a wave, washing away the walls Elliot had built. He leaned closer, their knees brushing, and for a moment, the world was just them, their breaths, their heat, the unspoken promise of something more. Then Sam's hand found his, tentative but warm, and Elliot didn't pull away. They talked late into the night, the conversation flowing like a river. Sam shared pieces of his life: his dad's death, his mom's struggle with addiction, the reason he'd never left Laramie. Elliot opened up too, about his transition, the family that cut him off, the loneliness that had driven him to the road. It was raw, real, and for the first time, Elliot felt seen. As the clock ticked past midnight, Sam stood, offering Elliot the couch. "Get some sleep," he said, his voice soft. "You're safe here." Elliot lay down, the couch smelling faintly of Sam's cologne. He closed his eyes, the weight of the day lifting, replaced by something new: hope, fragile but growing. Outside, the wind howled, but inside, it was warm, and for the first time in years, Elliot slept without fear. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the bungalow's windows, painting the room gold. Sam was already up, making coffee in the kitchen. Elliot joined him, the domesticity of the moment catching him off guard. "You make a mean couch," he said, trying to lighten the mood. Sam grinned, handing him a mug. "Wait till you try my pancakes." They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, but the peace didn't last. Sam's phone buzzed, a text from a friend at the sheriff's office. Tate had been suspended for the night's antics, but he was still out there, angry and unpredictable. "We need to be careful," Sam said, his voice grim. "He's not done with you." Elliot nodded, the note's words flashing in his mind. He wasn't running, but he wasn't sure how to fight either. Not yet. But with Sam by his side, he felt like he could learn. The morning air was crisp as Elliot and Sam stepped out of the bungalow, the gravel crunching under their boots. Elliot's truck was parked in the driveway, a silent reminder of the road that had brought him here and the trouble that followed. Sam's warning about Tate lingered, a shadow over the fragile warmth they'd built last night. They drove to the garage, the town waking up around them. Laramie's main street was quiet, lined with mom-and-pop shops and faded American flags. But the peace felt deceptive, like the calm before a lightning strike. Elliot kept his eyes on the side mirrors, half expecting to see Tate's cruiser, At the garage, Sam threw himself into work, his hands steady as he rebuilt a carburetor. Elliot watched, marveling at the ease with which Sam moved. Like the world made sense when he had a wrench in his hand. You ever get tired of this? Elliot asked, leaning against a workbench. Sam glanced up, a smudge of grease on his cheek. Fixing things. Nah. It's the one thing I'm good at. People. Though, that's messy, eh? Elliot laughed, the sound surprising him. Tell me about it. They worked side by side, the rhythm of the garage soothing Elliot's nerves. But the calm shattered when a pickup truck roared into the lot, kicking up dust. It was Buzzcut and Scarface from yesterday, their faces hard with purpose. Elliot's stomach dropped as they climbed out. A third man with them, taller, leaner, with a snake tattoo curling up his arm. Sam, Elliot said, his voice low, urgent. Sam straightened, wiping his hands, his expression unreadable. Buzzcut stepped forward, his voice loud enough for the whole street to hear. Heard you're harboring a freak. Hanson. Bad for business. Sam's eyes narrowed. My business is fine. You're the ones making a scene. Snake Tattoo smirked, cracking his knuckles. We're just here to talk. Your friend needs to know his place. Elliot stepped forward, his fists clenched. I know my place. It's right here. The air crackled with tension, the three men fanning out like wolves circling prey. Sam moved closer to Elliot, his shoulder brushing against his. A silent promise of protection. You don't want this fight, Sam said, his voice calm but deadly. Walk away. Scarface laughed, but it was cut short by the sound of tires on gravel. A sheriff's cruiser pulled up, and the younger cop from the highway officer Daniel stepped out. His face was pale, but his voice was firm. What's going on here? Buzzcut hesitated, then muttered something about just talking. Daniels didn't buy it, his hand resting on his radio. Get out of here, he said. Now. The men grumbled but left, their truck peeling out with a screech. Daniels turned to Sam and Elliot, his expression apologetic. Tate's been stirring shit up. I'm sorry. I'll keep an eye out. But, be careful. After Daniels left, Sam turned to Elliot, his eyes searching. You okay? Elliot nodded, but his heart was racing. They're not going to stop, are they? Sam's jaw tightened. Not unless we make them. That night, they went to a bar on the edge of town, a dive with sticky floors and a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the 90s. Sam said it was a safe spot, run by a friend who didn't tolerate bullshit. They sat at a corner table, nursing beers, the tension from the day still simmering. You ever been in love? Elliot asked, the question slipping out over the hum of conversation. He wasn't sure why he asked, but he needed to know more about Sam, to understand the man who kept standing in his corner. Sam's eyes softened, but there was pain there, too. Once. His name was Luke. We were young. Stupid. Thought we could keep it quiet in a town like this. Didn't work out. Elliot's breath caught. He hadn't expected that, Sam. Openly admitting he'd loved a man. It shifted something in him. Made the spark between them feel less like a risk and more like a possibility. What happened? Sam took a long sip of his beer. He left. Couldn't handle the pressure. I don't blame him. This place, it grinds you down. Elliot reached across the table, his hand brushing Sam's. I'm sorry. Sam didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his hand, their fingers interlocking. Don't be. I'm still here. And so are you. The moment stretched, heavy with unspoken words. Elliot wanted to lean in, to close the distance. But the bar's door slammed open, shattering the moment. Tate stood in the doorway, his eyes bloodshot, a bottle in his hand. He wasn't in uniform, but his presence was a threat all the same. "Well, ain't this sweet?" Tate slurred, staggering toward their table. The mechanic and the freak, playing house. Sam stood, his voice low. "You're drunk. Tate. Go home." Tate laughed, stepping closer. "Or what? You gonna protect your little boyfriend?" Elliot stood too, his heart pounding but his voice steady. "I don't need protecting, and I'm not going anywhere." Tate's face twisted, and for a moment, it looked like he might swing. But the bartender, a burly woman with a no-nonsense glare, stepped in, her voice cutting through the noise. "Out. Tate. Now." Tate hesitated, then stumbled out, muttering curses. The bar resumed its hum, but Elliot's hands were shaking. Sam's hand found his shoulder, grounding him. "Let's get out of here," Sam said softly. They drove back to Sam's place in silence, the night pressing in around them. Inside, Elliot didn't hesitate this time. He turned to Sam, their faces inches apart, and kissed him. It was tentative at first, then fierce, a release of everything they'd been holding back. Sam kissed him back, his hands strong and warm, pulling Elliot closer. For the first time, Elliot felt like he wasn't just surviving. He was living. The kiss lingered in the air like a promise, their breaths mingling in the quiet of Sam's living room. Elliot's heart raced, not from fear this time, but from the raw, electric connection between them. Sam's hands rested on his waist, steady and sure. And for a moment, the world outside Laramie, Tate, the note didn't exist. They pulled apart, foreheads touching, neither wanting to break the spell. "I didn't expect this," Sam said, his voice rough with emotion. "Not with you. Not here." Elliot smiled, a rare, unguarded smile. "Me neither." They sat on the couch, closer now, their knees touching. The night felt fragile, like it could shatter with the wrong word. But neither spoke of leaving. Instead, they talked about dreams they'd buried, fears they'd carried, the lives they wanted but never thought they could have. Sam admitted he'd always wanted to open a shop somewhere else. Maybe Seattle, where the air didn't feel so heavy. Elliot spoke of his art, sketches he'd stopped drawing when life got too hard, but now felt possible again. As dawn broke, painting the room in soft pinks, Elliot knew he was falling, not just for Sam, but for the idea of a life where he could be himself, unapologetically. It scared him, but it also felt like freedom. The next few days were a blur of stolen moments, coffee at the diner, quiet evenings at Sam's, hands brushing as they worked in the garage. But the threat of Tate and his cronies hung over them, a storm waiting to break. Elliot noticed the looks in town, the whispers behind hands, the way some locals avoided Sam's garage now. It wasn't just about Elliot Anna Marie, it was about Sam, too, and the choice he'd made to stand by him. On the fourth day, trouble found them again. They were closing up the garage, the sun dipping low, when a rock shattered the front window. Glass sprayed across the floor, and a note tied to the rock skidded to a stop at Elliot's feet. He picked it up, his hands steady despite the rage boiling inside. "Last warning. Leave. Or else." Sam swore, grabbing a broom to sweep up the glass. "This ends now," he said, his voice hard. "We're going to the sheriff." Elliot hesitated. The sheriff's office meant confronting Tate head-on, risking more than just words. But Sam's eyes were fierce, unyielding, and Elliot nodded. "Okay. Together." The sheriff's office was a squat building with peeling paint and a flickering fluorescent sign. "Sheriff Coleman." a grizzled man in his 50s, listened as Sam laid out the story of the stop on the highway, the note on the truck, the confrontation at the bar. Now this. Elliot handed over the notes, their words stark under the office's harsh lights. Coleman leaned back, his face unreadable. Tate's been a problem for a while, he admitted. But he's got friends in high places. I'll talk to him, but I can't promise miracles. That's not enough, Sam said, his voice rising. He's targeting Elliot for who he is. That's not just harassment, it's hate. Elliot's chest tightened at Sam's words. He'd never had someone fight for him like this. Not without hesitation. Coleman sighed, rubbing his temples. I'll do what I can. Stay out of trouble. Both of you. Outside, Elliot grabbed Sam's arm, pulling him to a stop. You didn't have to go that far, he said, his voice thick. You're risking everything, your business, your life here. Sam turned, his eyes blazing. You're worth it, Elliot. Don't you get that? The words hit hard, cracking open something in Elliot he'd kept locked away. He pulled Sam into a kiss, right there in the parking lot, not caring who saw. It was reckless, defiant, and for the first time, Elliot felt like he was claiming his place in the world. But the victory was short-lived. That night, as they drove back to Sam's, headlights flared behind them. A truck, too close, its engine roaring. Elliot's heart sank as he recognized the driver's snake tattoo, with Buzz cut in the passenger seat. They weren't just following. They were hunting. Hold on, Sam said, his voice calm but urgent. He floored the gas, the Jeep lurching forward. The truck kept pace, its bumper inches from theirs. Elliot's mind raced, searching for a way out. The road was narrow, flanked by fields. No turnoffs in sight. Call Daniels, Sam said, tossing Elliot his phone. He's the only one I trust. Elliot dialed, his hands shaking as he relayed their location. Daniels promised to send backup, but the truck was gaining, its headlights blinding in the rearview mirror. Sam swerved onto a dirt road, the Jeep bouncing over ruts. But the truck followed, relentless. Sam, Elliot said, his voice steady despite the fear. Whatever happens, I'm glad I met you. Sam's eyes flicked to him, a fierce smile breaking through. We're getting out of this, Elliot. Together. The chase ended at a dead end, a barbed wire fence blocking their path. Sam slammed on the brakes, and the truck stopped behind them, its doors opening. Snake Tattoo and Buzz Cut stepped out, their faces twisted with hate. Elliot gripped the door handle, ready to fight, but Sam squeezed his hand. Wait, he whispered. Headlights appeared in the distance. Daniel's cruiser, sirens blaring. Snake Tattoo swore, and the men scrambled back to their truck, peeling out as Daniels closed in. The cruiser chased them down the road, leaving Elliot and Sam in the dust. They sat there, hearts pounding, hands still clasped. You okay? Sam asked, his voice raw. Elliot nodded, a laugh bubbling up despite everything. Yeah, I think I am. The dust settled on the dirt road, the red glow of the truck's taillights fading into the night. Elliot's heart still thundered, but Sam's hand in his was an anchor, grounding him in the chaos. Daniel's cruiser returned minutes later, its siren silent now. The young officer stepped out, his face grim but relieved. They got away, Daniels said, adjusting his hat. But we've got their plates, and I've called it in. Tate's involved. I'd bet my badge on it. We'll find them. Sam nodded, his grip on Elliot's hand tightening. Thanks, Daniels. Keep us posted. Back at Sam's house, the adrenaline drained away. leaving Elliot exhausted but wired. They sat on the porch, the night air cool against their skin. The stars were bright, a reminder of how vast the world was beyond Laramie's borders. Elliot leaned against Sam, their shoulders touching, and for a moment, the fear felt far away. "I meant what I said," Elliot murmured, "about being glad I met you, even with all this." Sam turned, his eyes soft in the moonlight. "I'm glad too. More than you know." They kissed again, slower this time, the urgency replaced by something deeper: trust. Maybe, or the beginnings of love. Elliot didn't know what to call it, but he knew he wanted more of it. More of Sam. More of this life he was starting to imagine. The next day, the town buzzed with rumors. Tate had been officially suspended, pending an investigation into his off-duty behavior. Buzzcut and Snake Tattoo were lying low, but the sheriff's office was on alert. Sam's garage saw fewer customers, the whispers about him and Elliot spreading like wildfire. But Sam didn't seem to care, his focus on Elliot unwavering. They spent the day planning. Elliot couldn't stay in Laramie forever, not with the threats, the hate, the constant weight of being watched. But leaving now felt like giving up, and he wasn't ready to do that. Not when he'd found something worth fighting for. "Let's go public," Elliot said over lunch at the diner, his voice firm. "No hiding. No running. We show them we're not afraid." Sam raised an eyebrow, a mix of admiration and worry in his eyes. "That's bold. You sure?" "I'm sure," Elliot said. "I've spent too long hiding who I am. I'm done." Sam reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Then we do it together." They started small, holding hands in public, ignoring the stares. They went to the bar, danced to the jukebox, laughed louder than the whispers. It was defiance, but it was also joy, a reclaiming of space in a town that wanted to push them out. But Tate wasn't gone. Late that night, as they walked back to Sam's, a shadow moved in the alley. Elliot's heart leapt as Tate stepped into the streetlight. Sober now, but no less dangerous. His eyes were cold, his voice a low growl. "You think you can parade around my town like this? You're making a mistake." Sam stepped in front of Elliot, his voice steady. "The only mistake here is yours. Tate, you're done." Tate's hand twitched toward his waist, and Elliot's blood ran cold. But before anything could happen, a car horn blared, and Daniel's cruiser pulled up. Tate froze, then backed away, disappearing into the dark. Daniels got out, his face apologetic. "I've been tailing him. He's not supposed to be anywhere near you. I'll make sure he's picked up." Elliot nodded, his throat tight. Sam's arm around his shoulders was the only thing keeping him grounded. "Thanks, Daniels," Sam said. "We owe you." At home, they collapsed onto the couch, the weight of the night pressing down. Elliot turned to Sam, his voice quiet but resolute. "I want to stay. Not just for you, but for me. To prove I can." Sam's smile was soft, proud. "Then we'll make it work. Whatever it takes." They spent the night planning a future Sam's dream of a new shop. Elliot's art. A life where they could be themselves. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And that was enough. Morning broke over Laramie, the sky a soft pink that promised a new day. Elliot stood in Sam's kitchen, flipping pancakes, the smell of coffee filling the air. Sam leaned against the counter, watching him with a smile that made Elliot's heart ache in the best way. They'd survived the night, the week, the hate that had tried to break them. Tate was in custody now, charged with harassment and stalking, his badge stripped for good. Buzzcut and Snake Tattoo had skipped town, their trucks spotted crossing the state line. The sheriff's office was still investigating, But the immediate threat was gone. Elliot and Sam sat at the table, eating in comfortable silence. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. Elliot had decided to stay, at least for now. He'd found a part-time job at a local art supply store, a small step toward rebuilding his life. Sam was talking about expanding the garage, maybe even starting a community space for folks like them, people who didn't fit Laramie's mold but deserved a place in it. You know, Sam said, setting down his fork, I never thought I'd find this. Not here. Not after everything. Elliot reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining. Me neither. But I'm glad we did. They spent the day at the garage, cleaning up the broken window, painting over the scars of the past week. Locals stopped by, not all of them friendly, but some were curious, others kind. A teenage girl with purple hair lingered, asking Elliot about his sketches. A retired mechanic offered Sam a handshake, a quiet nod of respect. It wasn't acceptance. Not yet. But it was a start. That evening, they drove to a hill outside town, the truck's engine humming as they parked under a sky bursting with stars. They sat on the tailgate, wrapped in a blanket, the world quiet around them. Elliot leaned into Sam, his head on his shoulder, and for the first time, he felt like he belonged not just to a place, but to someone. I used to think I had to keep moving, Elliot said, his voice soft. Like if I stayed still, the world would catch up and crush me. But now, I think I can stop. At least for a while. Sam kissed the top of his head, his voice warm. You can stop as long as you want. I'm not going anywhere. The stars shone brighter, the night wrapping them in its embrace. They'd faced hate, fear, and a town that didn't want them. But they'd come out stronger. Together, they'd carved out a space where love could grow, where they could be themselves without apology. As the truck's radio played a soft country tune, Elliot closed his eyes, letting the moment sink in. This was his story now, not one of running, but of staying, of fighting, of loving. And it was only the beginning.